What's up, everybody? Hello and welcome to Not Your Average Meta, an MTG Commander channel dedicated to bringing you decks and commanders you wouldn't normally find in your average meta. This week's video is brought to you by our new channel sponsor, International MTG. If you're looking for competitive pricing on your favorite MTG cards, old and new, be sure to check out the International MTG store and TCG Player, link in the description of this video. This week on Not Your Average Meta, we're bringing you a one-sided beatdown courtesy of the Warhammer 40k universe down at the Hobby Horse. Speaking of, we'd like to shout out our second full-time channel sponsor for Season 3 of the Hobby Horse. If you're ever in the Central Illinois area, be sure to stop in and check out the store as well as saying hi to Martin. This week's matchup features CJ back again playing his favorite Esper commander, Marneus Calgar, Chapter Master of the Ultramarines. Gavin back playing an Ikoria Mutate deck being led by Illuna, Apex of Wishes, reskinned as Ghidorah, King of the Cosmos from Godzilla. Then we have Fog Raw back playing his modified Vampire Precon being led by Strefan, Maurer Progenitor. And finally Justin sticking with the old Demir bread and butter playing Oona, Queen of the Fae. Now that we're fighters, let's step into the Thunderdome and see which deck will come out on top. Turn 1, CJ plays an Evolving Wilds and cracks his go get a land while he passes. Gavin plays a Misty Rainforest. Fog plays a Swamp. Justin plays a Choked Estuary, revealing a Swamp from his hand. Gavin then pays 1 life to crack his Misty Rainforest to go get a tapped Breeding Pool. CJ plays a Plains and casts a Talisman of Dominance and a Mana Crypt before casting an Arcane Signet. Gavin plays a Mountain, then casts a Preordain, scrying 2 cards, keeping them both on top, drawing, and then passing turn. Fog just plays a Mountain. Justin plays a Swamp before casting a Winter Orb. On his upkeep, CJ wins his Crypt roll and draws for turn. He then plays a Swamp and casts an Everflowing Chalice kicked 3 times. Gavin plays a Beseji before casting his own Arcane Signet in his Sylvan Library. Fog draws for turn, then discards down to hand size. Justin plays a tapped Temple of Deceit, scrying a card to the bottom of his library. On his upkeep, CJ wins his Crypt roll, then draws for turn. He then plays a Swamp and casts his commander, Marneus Calgar. Gavin draws 2 extra cards and chooses to pay the life to keep all 3 cards he drew, before playing a forest for turn. Fog draws for turn, then discards down to hand size yet again. Justin draws for turn, then casts a Mesmeric Orb. On his upkeep, CJ mills cards off the top of his library before losing his Crypt roll and drawing for turn. He then plays a Swamp and casts a Space Marine Devastator, paying the squad cost 2 times. He then uses his Devastator's triggers to destroy Gavin's Signet and both of Justin's orbs. CJ then attacks Justin for 6 commander damage. Gavin draws 1 card for turn, then casts a Cultivate. He then goes to get a land to put into play off the Cultivate and then plays his land for turn. Fog draws for turn, then casts a Dragon Spark Reactor. Justin plays an untapped Watery Grave for turn, paying 2 life. He then casts a Dreamborn Muse. On his upkeep, CJ mills cards off the top of his library before winning his Crypt roll and drawing for turn. He then casts Launch the Fleet, strived enough to target each of his creatures. He then goes to combat, swings commander at Fog, while he swings his other creatures at Gavin and Justin. This then creates CJ 4 more tapped and attacking 1/1 soldier tokens. Second main phase, he draws a card for each token that entered play before casting a Catcher's Monument and a Skull Clamp. CJ then pays to clamp 1 of his tokens and draws 2 cards. Gavin forgets to mill cards on his upkeep and looks at the top 3 cards of his library, choosing to keep 2. He then plays a Mana Confluence before casting his commander, Illuna. Fog mills all the lands he's been looking for into his graveyard and then draws for turn. Justin mills cards off the top of his library on his upkeep and draws for turn. He then casts a Baleful Mastery targeting CJ's commander. This then exiles Marneus Calgar and CJ draws a card. On his upkeep, CJ mills cards off the top of his library before winning his Crypt roll and drawing for turn. He then casts an Inquisitor Greyfax and an Arco Flagellant, paying the squad cost 3 times. CJ then exiles Gavin's commander with the Swords to Plowshares, having Gavin gain 6 life. CJ then goes to combat, and in response, Gavin bounces the Inquisitor back to his hand with an Into the Royal. Everybody then takes your damage and he passes. On his upkeep, Gavin remembers to mill his cards before looking at the top 3 cards of his library, choosing to keep 1. He then casts an Auspicious Starix before playing an Ancient Tomb for turn and mutating a Dreamtail Heron on his Starix. He then exiles the top card of his library, putting it into play. Fog mills cards at the top of his library on his upkeep, then draws for turn. Justin mills cards at the top of his library on his upkeep, then also draws for turn. He then casts a Sewer Nemesis, choosing CJ. On his upkeep, CJ mills cards at the top of his library before winning his Crypt roll and drawing for turn. He then land cycles and Ash Barrens, going to get a Plains to put into play. CJ then misplays a Collective Effort by tapping his creatures to escalate the spell in order to destroy everything on Gavin's board and Justin's Nemesis. He then draws 2 cards and goes to combat, swinging all of his creatures at Justin for 15 damage. On his upkeep, Gavin mills the top cards of his library into his graveyard before playing a forest for turn. He then recasts his commander and passes. Fog mills cards off the top of his library on his upkeep and draws for turn. He then finally plays his 3rd land and passes. Justin mills cards off the top of his library on his upkeep and draws for turn. He then casts a Demonic Tutor, going to get a card from his library. Justin then plays a Glacial Chasm for turn, sacrificing a land when it enters. On his upkeep, CJ mills cards off the top of his library before winning his crypt roll and drawing for turn. He then casts a Company Commander, creating 3 soldier tokens when she enters. He then draws cards off his commander and casts a God Eternal Ketra. This then creates him another token while he draws another card off his commander. He then plays a Bastion Protector and draws another card off his commander, while Gavin shows off some sick tricks with Jacob's Fingerboard. CJ then goes to combat, swinging most of his available creatures at Gavin for 19 life. On his upkeep, Gavin mills the top card of his library into his graveyard, then draws for turn. He then plays a Shivan Reef and mutates a Souvenir Snatcher onto his commander. He then reveals the top card of his library, which he chooses to put into his hand. Gavin then chooses to steal CJ's Chalice with the Snatcher trigger, and in response, CJ uses the Chalice to flash in a Calidus Assassin, picking to copy Gavin's commander. Then in response to this, Gavin decides to prove a point and kills himself with his Ancient Tomb. Fog mills cards off the top of his library on his upkeep. He then plays an Evolving Wilds before cracking to go get a tap swamp. Fog then casts a Vampire's Vengeance, dealing 2 damage to each non-vampire creature while he creates a blood token. On his upkeep, Justin pays for his Chasm, then draws for turn. He then casts a Memory Erosion and passes. CJ wins his crypt roll on his upkeep, then draws for turn. He then plays a tapped Memorial to Glory before casting the Flesh is Weak. He then puts a counter on each of his creatures before taking Fog out of the game. Justin draws for turn, then scoops the game up to CJ. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you can see more games and decks you wouldn't normally see in your average meta.